In 1929, Michael King, whom the world would soon know as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was born at 501 Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia. Little did the King family know, they were bringing one of the most important people of the civil rights movement into the world. In 1944, King started his career at Morehouse College in Atlanta, during which, in his sophomore year, a letter that King wrote to the editor of the Atlanta Constitution, saying all black people are entitled to the basic rights and opportunities as American citizens, was published in 1946 and gained much recognition in Atlanta as well as with other activists at the time. Then in 1948, Martin Luther King was ordained and appointed as assistant pastor at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and later that year he earned his bachelor's in sociology from Morehouse College and shortly after began his graduate studies at Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. A few years later, King earned another bachelor's degree to then move on to begin his graduate studies in systematic theology at Boston University. 2 years after that, he and Coretta Scott got married at the Scott home near Marion, Alabama. Dr. King continued his progress in theology studies as a pastor for the next few years until 1955. The same year that he had his first child, Yolanda Denise King, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to move to the back of a city bus in Montgomery for a white passenger. This sparked a mass meeting held where the Montgomery Improvement Association was formed with King elected as its president. A month after MIA was formed, King received a threatening phone call in the evening, and a few days later his family home was bombed, thankfully not injuring his wife and child. Later that year, the Supreme Court finally ruled that Montgomery bus segregation laws unconstitutional. Then in 1960, King met with John F. Kennedy privately in New York when he was still a presidential candidate. The next year, King has his third child, named Dexter Scott, and in October he met with Kennedy to urge him to issue a second Emancipation Proclamation, and a mere 2 months later, King was arrested along with several other protesters during a campaign in Albany, Georgia. In the next 2 years, MLK was arrested twice more, showing how unwilling some places were to hear out the cause that MLK spread. Then in 1962, Dr. King led the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom when he gave his iconic I Have a Dream speech. After that historical year, MLK was named Man of the Year by Time magazine, and shortly after that, King met human rights activist Malcolm X for the first and only time in his life. And at the end of the year, he was awarded the Nobel Prize, where he declared that he would be using all the proceeds of the prize to help forward the movement that he helped lead. The next year, 1965, King led a large group of protesters to Selma, Alabama, where the day known as Bloody Sunday in the history books took place, where peaceful voting rights protesters were beaten by police at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The next 3 years of his life, he continued his efforts towards equality by doing many great things, including lead 2 other peaceful marches and give several moving speeches across many states. Until April 4th, one day after delivering his final speech known as I've Been to the Mountaintop, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a father, example, leader, and friend to many, was tragically shot and killed while standing outside on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. For more than a decade, King led by example and made a huge impact on the progress towards equality in not only the US, but in many other countries that were inspired by the change he was making. He was the most visible spokesperson of his time, and he encouraged every single individual that followed him to take a stand for their rights, all while following the peaceful teachings that activist Mahatma Gandhi so gracefully instilled. MLK's brave acts of activism will never be forgotten, and our country would not be the same were it not for him.